Okay. Well, hello out there, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for this online event. My name is Bradley Butler. I am the Executive Director and Curator at Main Street Arts in Clifton Springs, New York. And today we are joined by 4 members of the Print Club of Rochester for a virtual studio visit and demos from their studios. And while we'd love to be doing this in person with you all today, we're thrilled to be doing this at all, and especially having the ability to do it remotely. To give you a rundown of what you can expect today, you're going to see, so each of the 4 artists joining me today will give you some insight into what went into making the work that they have included in the current exhibition. And the exhibition is the 89th Annual Members Exhibition of the Print Club of Rochester, which includes the work of 21 members on the main floor, as well as a selection of presentation prints from the archive from the Print Club on the 2nd floor. That includes 25 prints total upstairs. Just to remind you, since this is a live Facebook event, you do have the ability to ask questions live. So please just type those in the comments section below, and we'll be sure to ask the artists. First, what we're going to do is just let each of these artists introduce themselves, and then we'll go back around and do a proper studio visit with each one of them. Katherine, would you like to start us off?
Certainly. So I'm Katherine Baca-Bielinis, and I'm the current president of the Print Club of Rochester. I am a printmaker who's pretty much does non-toxic lithography, silkscreen, and etching. Those are my 3 loves for the moment.
Great, thank you. And Chris?
I am Chris Charles. I do lino cut and letterpress printing here in Rochester, and I'm also on the board at the Print Club of Rochester.
Great, thank you. And Madeline?
Hello, I'm Maddie Corsaro. I'm probably one of the younger members, and my specialty is mostly monotypes and monoprints. And when I'm not doing art, usually I'm working for a bunch of other artists as well, so it's my favorite thing.
Great. Last but not least, we have Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick Ruth, and I'm a former board member of the Print Club of Rochester, I fell in love with, although I love all printmaking, I fell in love with intaglio printmaking in the fall of 1984.
The fall of '84. Great. Well, thank you, Nick. And again, be sure to post your comments in the comments section below. Comments, questions, anything you'd like to ask any of these artists, and we'll be sure to ask them. And again, thank you, each of you 4 artists, for joining us today and sharing a bit of your work with us. I think we'll get right into it here. Back to Katherine, and we can see a bit from your studio and hear a bit about your work in the show.
Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome to my studio. My studio is located in my home in the basement. So I'm just going to give you a quick little tour here. Turn the camera around a bit and show you the space that I work in. And so the table where I typically do all my drawing and painting. Yes, there's a fireplace. It's in the basement, so it gets quite cold down here. And my working area where I do most of my printing. My Praga press, which I love. And just all kinds of storage, which of course I've run out of space. Never seem to have enough space. And so 2 of the processes that I use are somewhat photographic. So I have a exposure unit for silkscreen right there. And I also have an exposure unit where I do my image on etching and also my photo lithography. So today, what I'm going to show you actually is my litho process, which I used in the 2 prints that are in the show. And I do a couple of different types of litho processes. but this one is photolithography. So in photolitho, what you start with is some type of image. And my image, typically I either draw or paint onto something that is translucent or transparent. So here's my drawing from my print, the print called Stoic. And this was done just using lithocrayon. I love to draw, and that's what I think I love most about lithography, is that ability to draw. So this is then taken and transferred onto a plate. This plate is an aluminum plate. Now this is not the actual photographic one because that has a light sensitive emulsion on it. And if I were to show it to you right now, it would destroy the plate. So what happens though is the image then goes face down onto the plate. It is put into the exposure unit and then processed. And then the image is then transferred to the plate. So this is my plate from that image. And what's nice about doing this process is that I don't have to think about reversal, because I'm putting this down backwards onto the plate, and then the plate is printing backwards. It's kind of like two negatives make a positive. So here's my image, and so I can work very easily with silkscreen on top of that. So the other thing that's unique about this process that I do is the fact that I use acrylic ink. And I could use an oil-based ink, but I use acrylic ink for this other a lithography process that I do called waterless litho. So I figured I might as well have the same ink for both. So it's called Sphinx, and I already have some rolled out here. I'm going to do the litho the same way a litho would typically be done, which is applying water first onto the surface of the plate, getting the whole thing moist, taking my roller and just getting a little bit of ink and just rolling across the surface. And typically I will roll it 3 times to get the right amount of ink. My water that I'm using too also has a little bit of gum arabic in it. Just go one more time here. Okay, I'm ready to take this to my press. So I'm going to turn you around just a little bit here, hopefully not making you dizzy. There's my press, and I'm going to put my plate down. Now I'm going to spin you one more time, sorry. I don't soak my paper. What I do is I actually just water it down, spritz it on both sides, and just have it on a towel. Because for litho, it really doesn't need to be as wet as you would with etching, because it's not really going into the crevices. It's a planographic method, which means that the ink is sitting on the surface. So my paper is ready, I hope.
And Katherine, before you go further, can you let us know, for people who maybe are not as familiar with some of the process and materials, why is the gum arabic in with the water?
The gum arabic just helps with the transfer of the ink onto the plate. And it also helps to prevent it from staying away from the areas where it shouldn't go.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So I'm just going to take my paper, place it on top of my plate. Now, the other thing that's really nice about this is I'm able to use an etching press instead of a litho press. So I can use the same press for a lot of my processes. And I don't use all 3 of the blankets, I only use 2 of them. And in place of the 3rd pusher blanket, I use just a piece of plastic, which kind of acts as a tympum. And so it gives sort of even pressure across the entire plate. So the press has been acting up a little bit, so cross your fingers. Okay, and there is our print. So what I did also is, so once this part was done, then I did my silkscreen on top of it. My silkscreen was also photographic, so it was essentially the same kind of thing where I created the images onto a piece of Mylar using a marker this time. This was then exposed to an emulsion that's on the screen, and each one of these represents a different color. So let me show you some of my process pictures, so you can see the steps that I went through. So this is the first color, which was kind of a grayish purple. Then I added a beige tone on top of it. I added kind of a brown color. Added the black to give the scrolling down below. And this one, I actually just did this little arched area because I felt like it wasn't popping out enough. So that was kind of a little addition there. Wasn't really planning on that part. And then this one, I added in the purple that you see up above here. I just wanted to make it look a little more distressed. And for my last one, I added just a tiny bit of black shades, you know, shadowing taking place around the actual corbel there. So that was the finished print there, called Stoic. And so I used the exact same process for the second print that's in the show, which is called Grotesque. So the litho is the actual figure there, and then all the background is the silkscreen. And I've been playing a lot with the different methods of the silkscreen, the litho, the intaglio, just to kind of see how I can make them sort of work together in different ways than what I've done before. I started out really just doing kind of one color prints, and now I've kind of definitely moved on to adding a lot more color to it. And so I've been playing a lot more about how I want to introduce that color, sometimes subtly, sometimes stronger. And so I was pleased with the way that both of those prints came out, and definitely want to try more like this. So that's about it for me, unless anyone has questions.
Great, thanks, Katherine. Yeah, and if anyone has questions, even that you may think of, throughout the rest of the event today, you can still put them in, and we can ask them, at the end as well. So, so great. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think, it's so cool to be able to visit you, from the comfort. Well, I'm in the gallery, but from everyone else's home. So this is a great day, really. So awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And up next, we've got Chris Charles.
Hello. And greetings from Flower City Art Center, which is where I do all of my printing. So I tell everyone, definitely a huge asset to our community here, and I would not be printing if this place didn't exist. So these are we've got 4 letterpress presses, proofing presses, and that's what I do the majority of my printing on. We also have this kind of crazy commercial press, which is a windmill, Heidelberg windmill. It's fully automated. When you see it running, it looks like a mad scientist designed it. There's all these moving parts. Expect steam to start coming out of it. It's awesome. It's so fun to use. On the other end of things, we have some really old presses. So this is an old one. And it wouldn't be a letterpress studio without some movable type. And we have a pretty awesome collection of wood type, especially, some of which is easily 150 years old. So I'll try to show you a few. I love using it. So if I'm going to use it in a print, I've just got to find a typeface that will work with the space that I have that also kind of fits the look I'm going for. Upstairs, we also have a newly reorganized print studio with 3 etching presses. And then down in the basement, we have a whole ton of more wood type and metal type. So all the presses that I use, those proof presses that I had, I'm going to try to, my phone is still making noise, were made to print that wood type and metal type. So everything I print has to get up to that height. So when I'm doing a lino cut, I just need to mount it to a piece of wood, usually MDF, to get it to the right height so it'll ink properly and print properly in the presses. But just to go through a little bit of my process, I usually start with a drawing on tracing paper. And the reason I like to use tracing paper is, I will show you in a sec. See if I can, here's, I don't know if you can see, this is a drawing I did for my Robin print. Once I do the tracing paper, I can flip it over onto the linoleum block. Usually I use a bone folder or something hard, and I can go over the drawing and that'll transfer it to the linoleum. Then the image is reversed. I don't have to worry about reversing things, and I can go over it with some marker and start carving away. All of the prints that I have in the show are something called a reduction cut, which means instead of creating a separate block or plate for each color, like Katherine was talking about, she did separate screens for each color. I just use one piece of linoleum. I carve the whole shape, I print my first color, and then I carve away into that same block everything that I want to keep that first color, and I keep going from there. So I'm essentially destroying the block as I go. So it just takes a little bit of thought beforehand, because there is no going back. If you get halfway through and realize you've messed something up, you pretty much just have to start over. But to illustrate that, I thought I'd go through my Robin first. So the first color was yellow, which means everything has yellow underneath it. That's the whole basic shape. Fun fact, while I was carving this, my dog got hold of the block and chewed off the tail. So I had to slice it off and kind of patch it together. If you look really close, there's like a line kind of in there. I tried to disguise it, but yeah, learned my lesson about leaving my block lying around. So yellow underneath everything. Then I carved away everything I wanted to keep yellow and printed orange. So now there's orange and yellow. The other thing I need to think about too is as the colors are layering up, you're always going to see a little bit of that color from before showing underneath. So when I'm mixing my inks, I have to kind of make adjustments sometimes. So after I printed orange, I carved away everything I wanted to keep orange, which in this case was this lovely red breast, or orange breast in this case. Printed the gray. And then after that, I carved away everything else and printed the black. So this final block, I didn't even bother bringing it in, but it really doesn't have much left to it. It's just these little bits and pieces of the detail. And then for the final color, I decided I wanted this kind of wood grain background, and I decided to add some type, which I set in a circle, which is not quite how you normally do things. And I will show you on the press how things get locked up, but generally you need to apply pressure from side to side and top to bottom. So when you have a circle, it gets a little tricky. You gotta do some funky build outs. I had some odd scraps of wood that a friend loaned me that were in triangular shapes. I was finding a bottle cap to put in the middle of it to keep it in place. It was a pretty fun challenge though. And then the background was actually a piece of Luan, which again is thin, so I had to mount it to a piece of wood to get it up to the right height. And then I just very crudely kind of carved away the shape of the robin's head, so that didn't get printed. It was just the blue background. And I have one more example of kind of the similar process I did for my robin. The fun thing about the robin, which started with my orange, so again, that's the whole shape. The next color was red, but again, I was talking about layering and having the ink show through. So this red is actually magenta. So that's what went over the orange to create the red. And then again, black was the next color. So not very much left of this block. And then I did the same thing for the gold background, and I actually have that here. So you can see it's a piece of Luan that I carved out and again, just stuck to a piece of board to get it up to the right height. I thought I would show real quick that crazy typesetting because I haven't distributed this yet. I think you can you see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. So as you can see, I've got, like I said, a bottle cap in the middle to kind of hold things in place. And then once I got this on press, I had to build out to basically make it into a rectangle so I could, again, apply pressure from all sides. And I thought I would bring you over next. Are there any questions so far I should ask? We doing good?
Yep, we're good right now. But if you do have any questions for Chris, put them in the comments below.
So I thought I'd take a closer look at that press just to explain. Let's see here. Sorry, this is so wobbly. I hope nobody's getting motion sickness here. So this is the bed of the press, and this is where everything gets locked up. So this is a plate that I just carved recently and printed yesterday. So again, furniture, which is what these wood blocks are called, put on side to side and top to bottom. These coins twist and apply pressure so it holds everything in place. Up a little further, we've got our inking rollers, and then up here is where our paper goes and gets locked in place. And there's guides to hold everything in a very exact place. So if I'm doing a large edition and printing multiple colors, everything will always line up, which is very handy. These presses were kind of used for commercial purposes initially. So because I'm not hand inking, I can get away with pretty large edition numbers, which can be fun, especially if I'm doing like a poster for a band or wedding invitations or something like that. But even my own fine art prints, it's hard to not do editions of 200 or 300 sometimes if it's something I'm really into. So I'm just gonna print something real quick. We replaced the motor on this press recently and it's a little noisy, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me okay, but it's gonna be the visuals that count. So let me fire this baby up. I'm gonna engage the inking rollers and they oscillate back and forth to distribute the ink. And I've got my first color that I printed yesterday. It's locked in place. And print. See, it gives a nice even color. I have to say, because of these presses, I'm terrible at hand inking. I've really gotten spoiled using letterpress machines. So that's pretty much my process.
Great, yeah, and it's always great to see the inside of the letterpress studio at Flower City for sure.
Yeah, it's a fun place, and we've really got a spectacular collection of wood type and presses and everything. It's a gem for sure.
Well, great. And if anyone has any more questions or any questions for Chris as we're going along, like I said before, you can just put them in the comments. But honestly, I think so far it's been so informative that people are just, just watching us. This has been really great. So.
You mentioned too the text in the Robin print says, "Early bird gets the worm and first pick of the donuts." So. All right, I'm done.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and now we're going to go to Maddie Horsaro in her studio.
Hello. So this is going to be interesting because it's kind of like my makeshift temporary studio. I'm in the process of moving, so I'm not going to show you around because there's just boxes and stuff everywhere. And right now, I don't have my own press, but I am lucky enough that my coworker at the Cheshire Union, she's letting me borrow this funny little guy. I guess it used to be an old wringer washer, and someone built like the beds on either side of it. And so I haven't really used it or tested it that much, so it should be a fun experiment to see how well it does with monotypes. I'm not really sure, so that should be funny. But I guess first I was gonna talk about the two different kinds of prints that I have in the show. One is a monoprint, that's the meditative 2 print, and then the other one, Night Swim, that's the monotype. And I guess there's always like confusion about which is which, so hopefully maybe this will make more sense. This is the plate for the meditative 2 print, if you can see it. The lighting is a little weird. It's just a normal etching. I did this while I was in college at Nazareth, and we basically just, you get, I think this is a zinc plate. You cover it with etching ground. You scrape away what you want to have the acid bite into the plate, and then essentially it makes all these little marks, and that's your etching. So if anyone had an etching, basically how I turned it into a monoprint was, instead of just normally inking the plate like a normal etching and then printing it, I wiped away the ink more selectively so that it created an original. So I have the normal etching here. This is what it looks like without anything altered. So you can kind of see all the little dots and craziness that you can get into with an etching. And then you can change it in the inking process any way that you want. And this is just one example. There's the better ones in the show, but this one got really dark. And you can see I was really focused on the cabin on this one. So you can get crazy and change anything how you want. The other print, which is a monotype, is a specific process where you only get one print, sometimes two. The second one they'll call like a ghost print. I should have shown an example, but we'll see if I can maybe print a ghost print from this one. So basically, I use mostly oil-based ink, because with a monotype, you're just painting with the ink on a blank plate, and this is just plexiglass. You can use any kind of smooth surface, and then just as you would paint, you can do the same with ink right on the plate, and you can use anything. You can get really crazy and use like, I've seen people do like feathers and like Q-tips and stuff. I just have paintbrushes. I also cut up pieces of mat board, are good for scraping. And yeah, there's just multiple ways to go about it. So I guess hopefully you can kind of see. Usually I'll just lay out all my ink and then just go for it. So I'm going to try, let's see, I'll roll out some blue ink, because why not? We're just winging it. And you can just roll the whole plate, or you could roll part of the plate. I guess I'll try rolling 2 different colors, see what that does. So in this case, I'm using a lot more color. The print that's in the show is just, I think I mixed like a black and a red together and rolled the whole plate a lot more even than this is right now. And then I just went in and wiped away certain areas, or you can take, this is just normal turpentine, and you can kind of loosen up the ink in some areas. Another thing I like is you can kind of see the turpentine will like eat into the ink, and it creates some like interesting reticulation patterns, which is kind of hard to see. I don't know. It's mostly just experimenting because with monotypes too, you have to get like, this isn't a whole lot of ink, but you need the right amount of ink, the right amount of pressure, and it just everything has to be right, or it doesn't really print with all the details that you want. So I guess I'm just going to do some kind of abstract thing here. And you can...
As you're doing monotypes, do you have an idea in mind of what you want the image to be, or is it totally just reacting to what you're doing at that moment?
I guess it's both. Sometimes I'll have an idea or like drawings that I'll take that I've done elsewhere, and I'll kind of work from that. And usually I don't transfer it onto the plate. I'll just kind of copy it in a sense, and then like as I'm working on it, I'm changing things from maybe the photo that I was working from or the drawing that I'm working from, and that sort of adds some more spontaneity to it. And then other days when I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do and I just need to do something, I'll just roll a bunch of ink out and just start going crazy, and you can get as abstract or not abstract as you want. That's kind of the fun of it. I'm gonna try, sometimes paper towel is an interesting one to try too, because you get like the texture from the paper towel on the plate. So I can kind of see there, you can get some fun texture from the paper towel. So I guess we'll try printing it. It won't be anything crazy, but usually, so I already wetted a piece of paper, and I'll blot it a little more. And then I'll rotate you here. Take your plate. This press doesn't have, like, the bed doesn't roll or anything, so it should be interesting. And then you just put a piece of paper over it nicely. Now this press you will definitely hear because it's like some antique, so you're gonna hear some squeaking, and we'll see what comes out of it. All right. So kind of messy, kind of crazy, but yeah, you can, there's so much experimenting to do, which is why I love it, because there's never like one set step-by-step rule for monotypes. And yeah, that's all I got.
Great. And so especially going from, you know, Chris doing the letterpress to you doing this process, Can you tell us a little bit about like wetting the paper and what that does versus like, Chris's process didn't do that, so.
Yeah, I guess it's a good question. Wetting the paper, it just helps the ink absorb better into the paper, especially for monotypes. If you want like that detail, you kind of need to do that first. With lino cuts, for whatever reason, it's just not necessary. It's kind of hard to explain, and it's kind of crazy to think. I think that's why I like printmaking so much, is because all of the processes are so crazy different, and I just wonder sometimes how people come up with this stuff, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting, that there are so many different processes, and to think about the print club as a whole, and you think that that's, there's this group of people all doing the same thing because they're all printmakers, but everyone's doing something totally different, and that's definitely showcased well in the exhibition, for sure. So
Cool.
yeah, great. I should have pointed out earlier, we've had some comments, not questions, but Barb McPhail has commented a few times. Fabulous and informative. She loves letterpress. Love what can be done with it. Love your work, Chris. And then also, she was wondering how you made your prints, Maddie. So she was glad to hear the process. So, so great. Well, thank you so much. And glad that press worked out. And it's definitely, the most unique press I've seen. So should be proud.
Yeah, it's really funny. I want to play with it more, and that's probably what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day.
That's great. All right, well, thank you again. Great, well, now it is time to check in with Nick Ruth. So Nick, would you like to take us through your process?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to do that. Thanks for this opportunity. It's been really cool to see everybody's work and how they make it. In my case, you can see I'm not in a studio right now. I'm in a kitchen, and I guess you can also see this couch over here, which doesn't look especially functional, and that's because we're doing something in the room where that couch usually lives. So, so instead of looking at that for 10 minutes, I thought what I would do is share a PowerPoint presentation about this project that I just completed with Mirabeau Press in Buffalo, and describe this whole thing because I think it's really interesting. This is a model printmaking that many people would call collaborative printmaking, where an artist ends up working with a print shop, if they're lucky, and the artist brings the ideas and helps execute a bunch of the work, but also relies heavily on the printers at the print shop for their technical advice and aesthetic advice as well in the production of the work. So I've had this idea for quite a while to make a series of large scale etchings of cell towers, because that's imagery that I've been working with for quite a while, but I've been working with in monotype and monoprint. And it really focused on color more than anything else. And etching as a medium is so beautiful. It handles detail and line and drawing description so beautifully that I wanted to also be able to experiment with that. But I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it myself because the technical demands were going to be too significant. I don't have the technical chops for that, much less the shop. So I met Mijin Shin, sorry about that, folks. Typical, right? And I met her through something else, saw some of her work and got really excited about that and ended up including her work in an exhibition that I curated. And then she started up Mirabeau Press with Bob Fleming and Rachel Shelton in Buffalo. And I approached them about the possibility of working together, and they agreed, which was, as you can imagine, a huge relief to me. So let me show you what we've got here. Share my screen, head to the presentation, and play it. Does that look good? Does it fill in the screen there? Okay, good.
Yep, that looks good. Looks great.
So to start out with, I just thought I would show you a studio shot because there is a studio. It's not really a printmaking studio yet, and maybe never will be, but this is a studio that I just got in February. I used to have a studio in the Hungerford years ago and then stopped having a studio because I was using you know, the print facilities at my school, Hobart and William Smith colleges. And, but recently had an opportunity to get a studio. So this is the second floor corner office, as it were, in the Cumberland building, which is where the post office is, just off the inner loop. So right above the post office is my studio. It's kind of an interesting space, not quite a rectangle. And these are the windows that look past the columns that frame the doors to the post office on the first floor. So I'm eager to get in there and get doing stuff. The pandemic had some things to say about that, so my progress has been slow. But in the foreground on the left, I'll just mention that is a screen print vacuum table that I had custom built. And so I'm really excited to put the finishing touches on that and be able to use it. The genesis of this line of work for me has been just noticing stuff in the world, and particularly noticing the things that you don't necessarily notice, things that you take for granted, but things that are weird or cool, or weird and cool. And I think that cell towers fall into that category. As somebody who works in Geneva quite a bit, I'm passing by a lot of cell towers on the thruway, and they just rise up out of the landscape and declare themselves necessary. So I've always been fascinated by that, and the whole sort of cultural aspect of it, but also the forms themselves. They seem really interesting from an engineering point of view, and also the shapes and lines and so forth. So this was what I wanted to try to represent with this series of etchings. To do that, I knew I needed to do some preparatory drawings because the scale was going to be big. The plates were going to be 40 inches by 24 inches, and I needed to figure out exactly how, what was going to go where. So I made some preparatory drawings in pen and ink, and did the math and figured out how tall things were going to need to be and how they were going to have to be spaced, and began to elaborate the drawing a little bit so that I could start to think a little bit about line weight and what was going to get emphasized and so forth. I only did this on the very first one because it was pretty time consuming to produce this. And once I had produced one of these drawings, I had a sense of what the scale had to be for the others. So that helped to inform my process. I hope you all take this photograph in the humorous way that it was intended, because I was working on the drawing and had my headgear on, and which is a magnifying glass, you know, set up basically a jeweler's loop so that I could see what I was doing because of the level of detail. And my son walked by and thought it was funny, so he took a picture of me, and I intentionally said, okay, wait a minute, and held the ruler down with my elbow so I could flex while I was drawing. Yeah. But you can see basically the scale, because I was trying to make a one-to-one drawing of what the size of the print was going to be. And you can see some of the tools that I was using to generate the shapes that I needed. This is Mijin putting the hard ground on the plate. So this is telling you a little bit about the size of the plates. And yes, she does work fast. And that's the studio at Mirabeau. So after the plates had the hard ground put on them, I had to figure out how to get the drawings on. I used a white opaque pen to draw on top of the hard ground because I had to, the hard ground, which is dark, made it difficult to see other kinds of marks. And of course I had to do something that I could lay on the surface of the hard ground because you don't want to scratch through it except for where you want the lines to translate into the print. And so that's what this is a photograph of, the guidelines that I gave myself. And then also the shinier parts are where I've used an etching stylus to scratch through the hard ground and expose the copper plate underneath. This is a smaller plate of a related work, but I again wanted to show you some of the stuff that I ended up needing to get a hold of so that I could do what I wanted to do. And thank God for art stores. They have all kinds of cool gizmos. And so I went and I got some crazy templates and French curves and all this kind of craziness. And that was really fun to play with, and I look forward to using them some more. This is the gorgeous giant Etching Press at Mirabeau. This section of the facility is maybe a quarter of the main room that they have, and then they have an additional space for screen exposure and washout and Aquatint, spray paint Aquatint booth, and a computer station, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really beautiful facility, wonderful people, and you know, really well outfitted. So here's the first proof of the print, Farmington Town Hall. This is just a line etching. So you can see there's not much there yet. It's just the line etching. There's not even any indication of the ground plane in relation to the sky. And one of the cool and interesting things about printmaking, of course, is that you don't know what you've got until you pull the print off the plate. And so you have to be nimble and flexible. I was a little disappointed in the sort of forcefulness of the line work. I was hoping for it to be darker and stronger right out of the gate. And so that meant that we had to go back and do a whole bunch of other kinds of things to get to that more meaty feeling to the towers themselves, including things like painstakingly painting out the plate and leaving only those areas that I wanted to Aquatint to make them darker. I know I'm using some technical terms related to intaglio. For some of you, that'll make a lot of sense. And for others, I'd be happy to answer questions about it if needed. Here I've got a hairdryer set up on low, just gently warming the asphaltum hard ground so that it's a little bit softer, so that as I do this delicate line work through the hard ground, it doesn't chip and flake. Here's Mijin inking up one of the plates on a hot plate. So a lot of times you don't have to do it this way, but it works well to put the copper plate on a hot plate, which warms it up a little bit and allows the ink to be more easily worked into the plate before being wiped clean. And here's an early shot of early proofs where we're starting to think about the ground plane. The sort of shiny plastic thing you see on the farthest print to the right and the center one is I made a computer file. I was trying to figure out, well, how am I gonna, describe the ground? I want the ground to have stuff on it that helps to signal near and far, so a scale change from near to far. And, but I don't want to have to draw things by hand. A, I don't want to have to do that because it sounds like a lot of work. And B, I don't really like the way my own personal handmade mark looks. So what can I do? And I thought, well, I'll connect to print history to do this. So I just went to the Metropolitan Museum webpage and went to their collection and put in landscape prints and hunted and hunted and hunted and hunted and hunted until I found details of things that I thought I could use. So in the bottom right-hand corner of the Allert van Everdingen print, I found a cluster of rocks that I thought was pretty interesting. So I copied it and pasted it into Illustrator and messed with it a little bit. And then Mijin helped me to turn that file into a bitmap that we printed out onto Mylar. And then we exposed that to a silk screen. And then she screen printed onto the copper plate this bitmapped information that that results in the rocks and plants that ended up being on the ground plane in my prints. So here's another example of a Beatrice print where I excerpted or appropriated the plant and then pulled it into the print. So here's my computer file initially that forms the ground plane for one of the prints. And what I just did is I create some groupings and then I would just copy and paste them all across. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, which of course looks terribly mechanical. So then I went through selectively and erased individual ones so that all of that symmetry and repetition was disrupted and it felt a little bit more organic. So there you can see, for instance, that's a different image, but how that went. And here's again the facility at Mirabeau. This is one of the really cool things about the whole process that we worked out together. And it is me or Mijin doing an Aquatint gradient. So how do you get a gradient to go from light to dark in intaglio with the Aquatint process? Well, here's one way to do it. So that plate is in the acid bath, it gets lifted up, a little water put on it, the acid spread across the bottom. So there's some acid getting on the top, less acid getting in the middle, and a lot of acid getting on the bottom. And that's what produces the gradient from light to dark, which is pretty cool. And here's Mijin and Bob pulling one of the prints right after it's gone through the press. So actually looking at it upside down maybe is helpful because, you know, robs you of immediately trying to read the content. And so you could just look at it visually. So you can see in the ground plane upside down, the ground plane goes from top light to dark as it hits the center line. And that was the effect that we were trying to achieve in order to create some real contrast between that and the white sky. That's an earlier proof that where the ground plane wasn't dark enough. So in fact, with most of them, we had to go back and, or Mijin had to go back and Bob and redo the aquatints. And here's Bob sanding the sky to get it nice and smooth so that it'll print perfectly white. And Bob saying, look, he made a mistake over here too. And Mijin looking sad about that. Mijin did additional mark making for me in places where we agreed things needed to be darker. And then when the editions were all pulled, I had to curate them. So I looked at the available prints. I think there was, in this case, what, six? There was an artist proof on the bottom, but 6, and we were shooting for an edition of 5. So I was picking the 5 that were going to be part of the edition. So each of the 4 prints is an edition of 5. And here we are curating a different print from the series. And signing them, which I always do with my eyes closed. And there they are. They're, you know, intended to be, just to wrap up, a series of portraits, but, you know, ironic portraits in a way, because I'm trying to adopt a language of glorifying these objects as if they were important personages in history, but also taking them out of their natural habitats and putting them in these more dystopian landscapes that are bleak and empty of people. So here are these things which are exemplars of communication in the middle of nowhere, talking to no one. And that's it.
Wow, that was really great. And this, I mean, really shows how, you know, even the 4 of you, how different each of you work. And it's really fascinating to see this, you know, collaborative kind of working. I mean, have you done work like that in the past, or is this the first time you've worked like that?
It's the first time I've ever done that. And I just feel so outlandishly lucky to have been able to swing it. And I really look forward to other opportunities to do this, because to be able to work with people who have such phenomenal technical expertise, and then also, you know, and can do things that would be very technically difficult for you yourself to do. There's that, but then there's also the fact that these are practicing artists as well. And so to be able to talk through a process, to deal with technical issues, but then just to get honest, critical feedback during the process. So I'll just give you a really short example of that, which is that at the outset of the project, I had imagined doing something called a spit bite aquatint in the sky. It's a very fluid but unpredictable way of putting tone, soft, fuzzy-edged tone into a given area of a plate. And we got the prints going, and I was just feeling super nervous about trying to do this, because once you do it, it's on there. And if it's good, that's great. And if it's bad, that's horrible. Because by that time, I'd had many, many, many hours of drawing into each plate. And so Mijin and Bob said, well, what if you just don't? And so I had to stop and think about that, because, you know, you imagine you're going to do what you imagine you're going to do. You have a plan. And when they made that suggestion, I did stop and I looked at the prints, and I realized that not only was that a way to avoid a potentially disastrous technical issue, it would actually make the prints better visually. Because I realized that key to making those prints make any sense visually was the 3-way relationship between sky, ground, and tower. And if I made the sky any darker than white, I was going to be compressing the tonal contrast possibilities, and it was going to make it very difficult to get that relationship to happen. So those guys totally saved me by helping me to think that through more clearly. So if anybody ever has an opportunity to work collaboratively like that, I highly recommend it.
Great. Well, thanks so much for that. And I had a few more comments. Basically, just exclamations of wow, and wow, so nice to see this new work, and a treat to see Mirabeau. We have a neat from Pat Bacon, who is actually going to be having a show here right after the Print Club show. She's in the show, but also she'll be having a solo show next. So look forward to that. And then Mijin said also, thank you, Nick. It was a wonderful experience working with you. So, so great. Well, great. I think that pretty much wraps everything up. I definitely want to thank the four of you for sharing your process, your studios, and your experiences with us today. I really enjoyed it. For me, this, anytime we do this, where I get to talk with artists online like this, which we've done a lot of lately, for selfish reasons, it's great because it's just, it's just something I really like to do. So, and we get to share this with people all over. So we can share it online. So thank you to all of you. And also, if you'd like to see this exhibition that these four artists are in for yourself, you can do that by booking an appointment to see the show on our website. And that's mainstreetartscs.org. And we do appointments from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. on the hour, the last appointment at 5 p.m. And as of next week, we're going to be open Tuesdays and Thursdays in addition to our Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So now you've got 5 days out of the week to make an appointment. So you can book an appointment now from Tuesday through Saturday. And this exhibition, the Print Club Member Show, is up through Friday, September 18th. Also, if you're either tuning in from afar or you just would rather see things more remotely, you can also go to interactive.mainstreetartscs.org and you can engage with the interactive version of this exhibition. And basically you can click on this show and also the past few shows that we've had, and you can scroll up and down. That'll get you to kind of walk down the wall, and you can see all the work in the show. You can click on pieces to see them larger, and if they're for sale, you can also view and purchase them in our online store. So again, thanks to these artists, and also thank you to all of you for tuning in. And we appreciate all of your time, and we hope that you have a great rest of your weekend. So everybody, I think I've unmuted all of you, or at least tried to. So you can all say goodbye if you'd like.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, take care out there, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.